Hello, everybody, and welcome to Office Hours, this little corner of cyberspace where we gather every single day to answer your questions about media and production and the web and all sorts of things technical. You can submit your questions about all that stuff 24/7, actually, all around the clock, and then we get to the questions every morning. If you have questions and you want to kind of get into the big system, you can join our Mukana thing. You can do that by going to officehours.global, follow the breadcrumbs where it says sign up, and you'll end up with the links to get into the formal system. And if you do that, you have a couple of options. You can actually enjoy Mukana and the community that gathers there every day to talk about things kind of behind the scenes, but you can also vote the questions that come in up and down. And when you vote them up, we take those questions and we get to them quicker and we spend a little more time on them. So voting does matter. If you just want to make it easy and do this the simple way, you can use this QR code that's popping up in the bottom of the screen. Shoot that with any device that handles QR codes and it'll take you to the direct question input. You can't vote there, but you can certainly get your questions into the show. And you can do that in real time, which means that if you have a question that an earlier question pops up for you, put it in, and if it gets voted up, it'll go into the show like everything else. Okay, those are kind of the rules. It's time to dive into the show. Alexander, what do our viewers and listeners have on their minds today?
This one's from the QR code. This is Carly Johannesdottir in Fort Duchesne, Utah. Is there an all-in-one AI app that will let you access all the major AI engines from one interface?
Jeffrey Powers is going to start us off. Jeffrey?
I don't know about an app, but I know, well, there's a Chrome extension. I'm not a big fan of Chrome extensions, so I don't put them up on too much, but there's one called Hauppauge.ai, which of course, what it'll do is you can then use the free structure of the AI tools that they have, or you can, like if with ChatGPT, if you pay for it, you can actually put in your information and go from there. The other thing is, Discord is a great place because a lot of those AIs have Discord bots that you can put into. So you create your own AI channel. Nobody has to be part of it except for you. And then put those AI bots in there. And then you can use it whenever you want.
Alex, Lindsay.
Yeah, I don't know anybody that's using one AI engine, and I think that Jeffries is a good example of something where you get to pick and choose. But I think that a lot of people like me are using a mixture of ChatGPT and Claude, Midjourney, other things that there's a Runway AI. Like I think I showed a astronaut. Like if you look at, let's see if I can find this real quickly here. If this is a good example of, oops, didn't get that right. So this is a Midjourney render that is taken into Runway and animated and then taken into Topaz and upscaled. so you kind of get used to figuring out how to stack these together, and how sometimes I'm having ChatGPT build prompts for Midjourney, or you can and Claude has better I think better tools to interrogate specific documents and build things that are a little bit more focused. And so there's a lot of different ways that you may end up using those. And I don't think we're in a place where anybody has all of them in one place right now. And so everybody I've talked to is using, there's ones that are specifically for medicine or law or other things that have been trained in a specific way. And I think that makes a huge difference.
Next question.
Andy Kokendorfer in Vieira, Florida asks, what live streaming engagement metrics beyond total viewers and methods do your clients find most valuable?
Jesse Kester is going to start us off. Jesse?
The number of people who are viewing isn't nearly as important to us as the amount of time that they view. So we'd rather have a much longer view time and longer engagement. That's kind of the first most basic metric we look at. After that, we look at conversions. None of the streams we do are in a vacuum. They're designed to get people to behave a certain way, to engage with our clients' products in a certain way. So we track that for the following weeks. Could be up to 8 weeks that we're watching conversions from a live stream. And one of the metrics that's really important to us internally is what upper management says about the streams that we do for our clients.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, I agree a lot with Jesse. What our clients often do pay attention to is total number of views. So that's what they think that's important. We usually try to talk them off that ledge because total number of views, a lot of times those views can be 3 seconds or, we want to see If you're in some worlds, you want to see how many watch more than 30 seconds, how many watch more than 2 minutes, how many watched, and what's your average view time. You don't want to only focus on those things, because one of the things that you might do is end up kind of catering to a niche, and that niche kind of builds, and you're looking at that, and that's the only thing you're paying attention to. Now, you may want to have niche marketing, and that's fine, but usually if you want to grow, you're going to have to allow that average view time to drop a little bit, and then look for increasing the number of people watching. So there's a little bit of a balance there that you kind of look at over time. But looking at concurrent viewers, one of the things that we like to look at, and a lot of tools don't give us this measurement tool, but we can ask for it for certain things like Akamai, is entry and exit rates. So what we want to see is how many people are coming into the show and how many people are leaving the show, because sometimes that can be hard, because when you look at concurrent viewers, that is an average of the two of those things happening at the same time, and so it makes it a little muddy figuring out exactly what's going on. But if you look at exit rates, especially, you can usually go back to where you can go back to what somebody said, or what something happened, and see, a whole bunch of people left right then. Like that person said something that turned people off. They talked too long. They showed the slide too long. They did, all those other things. And so paying attention to those things is important as well. And then interactivity, how much are people actually chatting with each other and asking questions, and so on and so forth.
Next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas asks, Substack rolled out live interactive videos yesterday, September 18th. Will Nigel and other Substack writers start doing live shows for paid subscribers and for their followers?
I'm sad that our friend Nigel isn't here today, because he's just launched. Well, I guess he launched a while back his Substack and is learning about it. Guy Cochran, what do you think?
Yeah, it's kind of like Instagram when it first rolled out. It was just the in-app where you could go live from inside, but I'm sure eventually we'll start to see RTMP as an ingest way of getting video in. I think it's a great feature, because there's a lot of writers that need to get paid for their content, and Substack's been a great way for people to get in front of people. So this is an attention economy, and Substack's been one of those mediums that have just pulled to the forefront right now, because people have figured out how to get subscribers, transition them from other platforms, and get them on there. So I'm excited to see what people do with AMAs and things like that, where they're getting in front of their audience well in advance, and then having questions that have already been placed in another format inside of a Substack, so that they could pull them in, then answer them live in front of everybody, and then collaborate as well. That's the other thing that this new feature allows, is to bring in other Substackers, and that way you can collaborate and get their audience as well on at the same time. So I'm excited to see how it flows for certain people. It's going to be a big boon.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, it's interesting. It'll be, I think that oftentimes live works really, really well as a follow-up to your article. So if you either, whether that article is a video or audio or other things, you build a piece of content that people can consume, and then they have questions. So Substack, being able to have people come after, publish an article, and then do as Guy said, do an Ask Me Anything, interview the person that they were talking to, but pull those questions in and have a discussion is really powerful. So I think it's a great step forward.
Next question.
Next one's from the QR code, Gene J. Anthony in Skokie, Illinois. What is a Sachtler, and does anyone have any experience with this? Seems like a great German brand, which our group likes a lot, of course, but how much should we buy to make things work best for us, and which are the good ones?
Sachtler's been around for a long time as a highly respected tripod manufacturer. A lot of models. Guy Cochran, what are your faves?
Yeah, I'm glad that you pronounced it correctly there, Bill. Sachtler is the way that you say it. Yeah, I've been an owner, I've been a dealer, a reseller of these products. So I've not only owned them, but I've sold quite a few. They're just really, really smooth heads. They're up there with the Vintons. You pay for them. They do have a less expensive line. Their Flow series, the legs are really fast to set up, and they're carbon fiber as well. So light, and then just that German quality build, so you're getting something that's beyond just some of the less expensive brands. I have a Benro here that I'm using now just because it's beefier for some of the bigger cameras that we use. The Sachtler ones, when you get into those larger payloads, like 20 pounds plus, you're looking at a $4,000 or $5,000 tripod. I also like Miller as well. So those are kind of my three that that are in my favorites. You'll mostly find these at rental houses. If you don't need them all the time, then just rent them because they're inexpensive to rent because they last a long time. But if you're shooting all the time, you'll appreciate having a really smooth head with adjustable drag and things like that, counterbalance. So you get what you pay for.
Alex?
Yeah, exactly what Guy said. The Sachtler is owned by Vitek, which is the Vitek group. They also own O'Connor and many of the other things, Manfrotto. They've kind of bought up those, and some of those they've kind of traded some of the products back and forth. Like for instance, I think the O'Connor the hot pod that I talked about last week or week before, I think now is made by Sachtler. So those are branded by that. So it's a little bit, they're all kind of part of a larger group of ownership, but they are very good. I mean, we've used their heavier heads. One of the big things is a lot of times you end up renting these, as Guy said, because the package, the legs and the head for like a 2575, I think is like $15,000. But the difference is that, so we don't buy those because they're also very durable. People can rent these for a decade or more. And so it ends up being I can pay $15,000 or I can pay $150 or $125 a day to rent it, and a lot of times that's what you choose to do. And so they're really good. They're in that kind of rental market for most people and not as much an ownership market for the higher end stuff. But they also make lots of smaller ones. I think the Ace products are some of the smaller ones that they make. And they have a lot of ones, the 18s and they're smaller ones there, but they get into the thousands of dollars for the heads pretty quickly. It's worth every penny. It's just a matter of whether you can afford that penny. Because what happens is when you get those heavier heads and you have more control over the drag, the things that you get into, like the Benro, I have a bunch of Benros. We don't use them as much for a lot of precise camera work because there's a little bit of play right at the very beginning. And that little play at the beginning of that turn means that you can't quite, it's very, very hard for you to get a smooth start on a Benro. That doesn't happen with a Sachtler. So the Sachtlers will you get them kind of a little bit heavy, so you have to push against them a little bit, and you get these nice, really, really smooth operations for a fluid head. So it's an entirely different world. Sachtler, Miller, as O'Connor, these are really big heads, or can be very large heads. That's what you use when you need a high quality actual fluid head motion.
And when you're watching a movie and you see that shot where you're over here and then there's a gentle acceleration across the process and then a slow down to exactly the shot that the cinematographer was looking for, that's usually the result of equipment like this that has very, very high tolerances.
I don't know if we'll get a comment onto that, but that oftentimes is as a gearhead, which is an entirely different world. Where you
can do
turning,
both.
When you start getting into those shots for film, it's a lot of us use fluid heads for video and for the stuff that we do. Once we get into film and these big pan shots, we're usually and we could do a whole second hour on gearheads.
That'd be fun.
Or just on heads on tripod heads
head
in general,
styles
the difference
and the kind of shots. Nice. Next question.
Next one is from the QR code. Gabriela Shesho Mistiera and Susei Marie is asking, some podcasters on YouTube have strong compression on their voice, and their voice seems harsh and hard to listen to. What are the guidelines for setting audio compression?
Alexander Knight, start us off.
Okay, so this is like a second hour, but like super, super quick, and I'll just cut to my dynamics processing here on my mixer. Now, I'm not using any. You can see my compressors bypass, but real quick, the general rule of thumb is you do not want to have a ton of gain reduction, and you want to set things so that it's pretty natural. So you just want to, if you want smooth, natural sounding compression that you can't really hear, but just kind of tames the peaks of your voice a little bit, what you want to do is make sure that your threshold, which here is set to -16 right now, you want to make sure that this is not set too low. If I set this to -40, it means the compressor is going to start working really, really low down in there, and that's where a lot of the noise floor tends to exist. So compressors can also bring up the noise floor in your signal. I would start with a ratio of 2:1, and basically what that means is if the signal goes 2 dB over the threshold, it will only allow 1 decibel over. A slow-ish attack around 30 milliseconds, and then a slower attack around, a slower release around 2,000 milliseconds. So this will sound pretty natural, and basically faster attacks I find basically make the signal clamp down quicker on the source, and I find that you start to hear the compression more often. And of course, there's also differences in sound character between different types of compressors like FET compressors and optical. We don't have really time to go into that, so that's a quick overview.
Jesse Kester.
When it comes to compression, I believe that less is more, and a little bit less than that is close to the right amount, because when your signal goes out through a YouTube podcast or something like that, it's very likely that people are listening to it on their iPhones or on their iPads or on some smaller, cheaper speakers, not like a full-blown sound system. And what's going to happen is on those cheaper speakers, especially on the iPhone and the iPad, it adds even more compression just because the speakers are so weak. It has to pump a signal through. So what you're hearing in your home studio will be less compressed than what people are hearing when they're playing it out of their iPhone or iPad or cheap little speakers. So less is more, even less. That's probably close to right.
Jeffrey Powers.
Yeah, if the creator is not the one that's causing the problem, because they create their podcast for iTunes, and they go through some of the podcaster rules and everything like that, and they're doing 64 kilobits per second instead of 128, which you should be doing more. You should be doing 192 for the audio or better. 320 is a great number too. But the whole point is that if they're compressing it to begin with, then when it gets into YouTube, it sounds even worse because YouTube does do some compression. The other thing is there are some settings inside of YouTube because not all people can be listening to shows at the actual resolution that is intended because they have low internet signals. So you can go in and check those settings and make sure it's not happening on your end.
Alex Lindsay.
A lot of listenability just has to do with it over time wear down the listener. And I think that compression often does. People do listen to a lot of it. And if you're not listening in your headphones, a lot of times compression just kind of evens everything out. And radio has been using it pretty heavily for a long time. So this is not a new thing to do, but it is something that heavy compression will wear down your audience. And so them listening for 2 or 3 hours, where we see heavily compressed in radio oftentimes is DJs that you're only hearing for a couple minutes. So you're hearing them jump in, hearing them jump out. As you move to something that's more spoken word, you look at NPR, that compression rate goes way down. As Jesse said, because they're expecting you to sit there and listen to it for a very long time. And that will, it will fatigue them in the same way that bad audio, those little, headset mics that a lot of times the gamer mics or whatever will start to wear people down just because without having a full spectrum of sound, it can make it very hard to listen to over time. And people won't notice it. They'll just find themselves efforting over a period of time to listen to what you're doing, what you're talking about. And so, yeah, I agree with everything that's been said before. I don't have any compression on mine. And I tend to like it that way.
Alexander Knight, you wanted to come back in?
Yeah, just a couple other things too. As you're training your ears to listen for compression, because going back to the question, what are the guidelines for setting audio compression? I would probably aim for about 3 dB of gain reduction. So all compressors will have a gain reduction meter to show you how much it's actually bringing that level down. More than about 3 or 4 dB, you'll probably start to hear it, and you can easily A/B it, and I would recommend you do so. So just do that. Try bypassing it and turning it on, and use your ears and listen for the differences in tone. And if you can't hear the difference, then you've probably set it to the appropriate setting where it's taming those peaks and it still sounds natural.
Yeah, I'll just add this little bit. I used to use a lot of compression because I was working mostly in radio spots of 30 seconds or less, and my goal was always to get the voice out front, have it be kind of brick wall, solid all the way through, so no data was lost, because that was doing the job of the commercial. Now that I'm doing a lot of work in audiobooks, I've completely flipped over, and I use very little, if any, compression. And the reason is I'm expecting the audience to be listening for long periods of time. A lot of people use audiobooks for when they're exercising, something like that. So they may be listening for an hour at a time. So that heavily compressed in your face thing over the course of that much time is just going to, I think, be fatiguing, and I just want to stay away from it. So it's, what are you trying to accomplish? And then you add the compression appropriate to that task. Next question.
Next one's from the QR code. We got Carly Johannes Dotier in Fort Duchesne, Utah. Angry Audio has a mic processor specifically designed for the Electrovoice RE range of microphones. What do you think of processing devices made for a specific line of mics?
Alex Lindsay, what do you think?
I think it's interesting, Bob. It's an interesting approach. Because I change mics and I do a lot of other things, the idea of building one, I can see how you could theoretically get more out of the mic by really focusing on exactly what that mic does. So if you're really committed to the EVREs, I can see how this might make a difference. But I don't know how many. I'd be really interested to see how many people buy into this, rather than a generalized, processor.
Alexander Knight.
I'm really fascinated by this, and next month I'm going to be talking to the angry audio guy about these. But I'm very skeptical about this as well. However, I can see the benefits of it because we were talking about this before the show started, but all microphones have different output impedances, and the load that is being put on that microphone can affect the tonality of that microphone. And so that's actually something I'm going to be messing with, because I've got this very own box here that has selectable impedance. It's a passive device. So I imagine if that mic processor has optimized impedance specifically for the RE mic to make it sound the best that it can possibly sound, then that could potentially be good. Again, if you live in the broadcast world and you got lots of those mics. I know those mic processors also have some kind of broadband noise reduction, which I haven't tested, but based on what I'm hearing, it sounds like it works really well. If it works like a cedar box, then again, that's a huge benefit to reduce the noise that's in your studio. So I'll have to test one and see. Hopefully I can get one.
Thanks for the question, Carly. Let's go to the next one. Next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. Amazon's deal with TikTok and Pinterest lets shoppers buy items from within Amazon ads without leaving the social media apps.
Jeffrey Powers.
Yeah, well, Amazon is Amazon, of course. We've gone through the infancy of influencer shopping. We've gone through the Wild West of influencer shopping, and now it's time to actually start to put everything together and make money. And that's what's happening here. Pinterest actually had a deal with Amazon back in 2023. I think that this is to really expand it out, because they found, a lot of people put their Pinterest. I do it myself with my Amazon channel. I'll put my Pinterest stuff up on Pinterest, and it actually does do a good job in making money. So once again, if they don't have to get out of there, they can choose to, but if they want to go to that walled garden of Amazon, then they can go in, and then they can also buy their trash bags and everything else from there. Pinterest last year did like 518 million because with the Amazon deal, they saw the revenues increase. So I think it's a very smart move, and since people are doing it anyway, make it easier for them to do.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that a lot of retailers have trouble with is the resistance of people like me who buy a lot of things on Amazon from using a different shopping bag. So it's very hard. Like, I will see something in TikTok and I'll go, oh, that's really cool. But then I'll find out what it is. I'll paste it into Amazon and I buy it on Amazon. Like, I'm not going to buy from some other store. Like, I don't know what the shipping is. I don't know what the returns are. I don't know, all my credit card stuff is all in Amazon. Like, I don't want to start spreading that out. So it's very, very hard to get people like me who are pretty active purchasers to leave the Amazon walled garden, as Jeffrey said. So by incorporating this into it, it's genius, to be able to do it, because again, there's only probably 3 or 4 retailers generally that I use online. And I'll almost always come back to Amazon or other ones to buy things, because I don't want to go through the process of putting my credit card in anymore to something else. And so I think that's the challenge that they have.
Jason Carella.
Yeah, I think this is a larger trend that's going on across the board with respect to transactions that you're doing on the internet. Like, when you do even a search on Google, it's going to deliver you a preliminary set of results inside of the Google search engine so that you don't leave. This is a similar kind of opportunity where you're going to engage with the app. You'll see it's already on Amazon. It's like an instant purchase, but then you can remain inside TikTok and Pinterest. And I think that's good for Amazon to close a deal, and it's also good for these apps to keep the viewers engaged and continuing to use their app for longer time. So I think there is good benefit commercially for both providers.
Yeah, I think impulse purchasing is a huge deal for people, and removing any friction you can between the urge, oh, I'd like that, and one click and you have it, is going to end up affecting sales pretty substantially. Next question.
From the QR code, Carly Johannes Dottier in Fort Duchesne, Utah. Keying software. Let's discuss.
Alex, you do a lot with this. The Chroma Key Master. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I've actually developed keying software. And what I'll tell you is that it depends on whether you're doing it live or in post. So that's one of the things that you want to take a look at. I think that for the most part, most of the software packages now have keying software built into them that are, that if you're not doing it live, are pretty much it's very similar. So what you can do inside of Resolve's built-in plugins, what you can do inside of After Effects built-in plugins are pretty good. And I think that really what it comes down to is, most of us who do a lot of heavy keying, it really comes down to if you're doing film work, excuse me, if you're doing film work, it really comes down to rotoscoping. You're separating things out. You're breaking things apart. You're separating the hair from the body, and you're doing all this other work to get the fine detail out of it. And that's not really the keyer. It's really just the skill set of how you approach that. For corporate work or for stand-ups in front of green screen, it's all about the screen. So it's all about how even the screen is and how nice and clean that screen is. And if you light that well, you can key it with anything. Like, it doesn't matter. You can get every little hair. What you're looking for is cameras that are capable of shooting either RAW or 444. You're looking for, the ability to, again, have big light sources that you can protect from your subject. That's going, and we open up scopes, and the software that I really pay most attention to is my scopes. And scope. We had Omniscope on last week. I don't do green screen without that piece of software because I want to see a nice even. I want to see a nice even scope before I start pulling keys or start shooting it. And I used to do over 10 hours a week of green screen, and so we had to, any little hiccup in the screen would cost a lot of money. So for us, it's really more about the screen and the camera and the capture than it is about the software at this point.
Jason Corella.
Yeah. Alex in office hours in general has absolutely ruined green screening for me because once you point out the flaws in it, when the lighting does not match the virtual background, or, when the hair is getting blended a little bit in the way that it shouldn't, it reminds me of the very first time I saw a sporting event on high def, and then I went back to standard def, and it's just wrong forever. So I think the technology related to keying is getting much better, and I'm especially impressed with the things that you can do live when you do it correctly. But I find 80% of the keying that I see doesn't meet this, like what industry standard should be. And every time I see it now, it disgusts me, where before I barely even noticed it.
And I have to say that when I say what bothers me, I mean, I don't like most of the comps in feature films. Like I'll watch a Marvel film and go, the key was okay. It's soft at, slightly, they're losing some of their hair, they're losing some of the things. And so it's hard to do it well, especially and I will say film is much different because there's hundreds of people. You're kind of putting green over what you can. It's a very different thing. But if you're doing people in front of green screen, standing, doing training, getting interviewed or whatever, you should see every hair. And if you don't see every hair, then the pipeline isn't what it could be. And it's not expensive. I've done this with like handy cams, like just literally like a $500 handy cam. I can pull a green screen that pulls just about every hair out of that without. It's really all about the lighting in the camera, or lighting and the backing and the lighting. The backing being composite components, green and large sources.
Jason, you want to get back in?
Yeah, I just also wanted to thank the prior discussion about audio compression, because now I know how to listen for that, and it's going to be just like green screens for me in the future.
What we like to call a red pill conversation.
Yeah, it's interesting. Green screens were pretty iffy in the beginning of my career. That was many years ago, and it took a lot of work, and only people like Alex, who had really studied this in huge depth, could do that work consistently and really well. I'm curious because of that experience I had at Comic-Con, where I came back with a photo of one of the cosplayers and I touched him, and the algorithms, AI algorithms at the back end of my phone pulled a key from that was decent. It is no worse than those green screen keys were when I started doing green screen back a long time ago. And so I'm interested in what's going to happen with those matte pulling things as we get more spatial information and the rest of that. This may be an area where we see a lot of advances in the coming years, and I'd be interested, Alex, in your thinking about what you see on the horizon for that.
No, I think that it could be it could get to a point where it could do all of it, even without a green screen. I mean, I think that AI and the processing could get to that point. I would say that what Apple's extract tool is still just okay. Like, from my perspective.
I agree with you 100%.
It's cute for making stickers, and I make a lot of stickers with it, but I don't. I still like it's like it's pretty good. So I think that's but I do think that there's a lot of potential there to get a lot better.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit better than the 25 megabit per second DV keys that I pulled years ago.
You look at Moises, and Moises is taking people's vocals and their guitar and their drums, and they're extracting it with the effects put on it and everything else. So if you see what they're doing with audio there, you can imagine that probably they could do it with video at some point.
Yeah. Next question.
Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana asks, never used this product to waterproof gear, but now that I live where rain happens all summer, what is your opinion or experience with press in seal?
Jesse Kester, have you used that?
I have not used that exactly. Let's take a look at what the product is before we get too deep into this. So this is a Glad press and seal type product. And if you're talking about equipment in rain, this would be better than nothing. But if you know that it's going to be rainy where you're at, I would really invest in, for $100 and up, something that actually protects the gear, is shaped like the gear and built to keep it out of moisture.
Jeffrey Powers.
Really depends on what gear you're talking about there, Roscoe. I would not put I wouldn't put cameras, especially with batteries, into plastic bags. And if you're going to do any plastic, you might as well get one of these puppies right here, because they're great for doing more than just small gear. You can actually wrap boxes and add an extra layer of protection from things from opening. But moisture is going to definitely get in, unless it's a bag with a definite seal that you can make it airtight and work from there. I put some stuff into plastic bags. Once again, I don't put batteries into plastic bags, and certain gear I don't put in bags. I'll put it into a box. I also have a whole bunch of silica gel, which you can get really easily in boxes, and you can then add that to whatever you're doing if you're storing the gear to keep it nice and dry.
Next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. Apple will likely announce new Mac models with M4 series chips in November. What will these new Macs look like, and what is likely to be the feature set?
Simple question. Alex, solve it for him.
Let me lay it out for you. Exactly what they're going to all look like, and exactly, So we have some rumors that the Mac Minis are going to be smaller. The rough size of an Apple TV, who knows, but something in that realm. The rumors are that it'll have 5 USB-Cs instead of any of the other things. There's still a lot of us still think that we're going to end up with an Ethernet, an HDMI, and a power conductor, as well as the 5 USB-Cs. The 5 USB-Cs just simply take the 2 USB-As and get rid of them, and possibly put one on the front. Or put them all on the front, we don't know. So that's the one that sounds like it's going to get a form factor change. Most of us don't expect form factor changes in the Studio or the Mac Pro if they get released. Apple's got this weird, I will say that I feel like Apple's rollout of these is really goofy. Like I don't usually look at Apple and go, I don't understand what you're doing, but this is definitely the way they roll these chips out, not having the Pro ones come out, months or years after the iPad and the MacBooks. Just it creates a lot of confusion for pros. It should be that the best chips come out there. I think that the reason that they do this, my guess is because it's hard to get the high quality chips out of the center of the wafer at the beginning of the production process. So they're able to put chips of lower quality and of lower consistency into the iPads, and they'll still perform the way that they're supposed to. And they can get the process going and even out that process before they build the Pro ones. And so that's my theory about why they're doing it that way, but it still feels odd. I think that the thing that a lot of us are the most excited about are the Mac Minis. A lot of us use a lot of Mac Minis, and really powerful Mac Minis that are really small seems really cool. So if there's any price point change in the Mac Minis, which we don't expect, we expect them to come in at $599. But if they had a version of those Mac Minis that came in at $299 or $399, it would devastate that market. For Apple to have something in that price point. But, again, we don't usually see Apple go for devastation. They just go for incremental improvement.
It's going to be interesting. Not far from where I used to live in Arizona, the new fab just opened up from TSMC, and they're down to 4 nanometer technology. It's just barely coming online now. They're talking about 3 nanometer and 2 nanometer, but this brand new plant that was hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, and they have more plants around it scheduled, is just in its shakedown area. So who knows what's going to come out and what the yield, as Alex was mentioning, is going to be. It's going to take, they said, some months for it to get up to speed and really start producing chips in quantity. Jeffrey Powers?
So what really has me is that November thing, because that's pretty late when it comes to putting out anything for 2024, especially if you want to get to the holiday market. The latest that Apple's ever done an event was October 30th, and I think they had they tried to scale that back so they could get whatever products done before November 1st. And then of course there's a lot of different challenges here nowadays, because especially the chip fab. I know that the M3 had problems with the fabrication of the chip, which is why we saw some devices in limited quantities, or at least Apple saying it's in limited quantities. So I don't know if they're still fighting over different features or additions or whatever, but we'll see what happens. And of course, M4 is going to happen. That's for sure.
Yeah, it just takes a lot of lead time, and trying to balance all these things, I would imagine, is a tough job. We'll see. Next question.
Peter Moore in Auckland, New Zealand asks, given today is a video day, Sony is advertising on my Apple TV YouTube app their new AI cameras. Thoughts on these? You guys and gals know my thoughts about the term AI.
Jesse Kester, what do you think?
Oh boy, is AI a catch-all term. You are correct. But let's take a look at what we're talking about, and then we'll talk about what we're looking at. So the ad that's being referenced is this, it's a fairly long commercial, just highlighting the different features of the camera, and most of them are pretty, in terms of our AI overlords, most of them are pretty innocuous. They're things like autofocus, subject tracking, stuff like that, which will be incredibly useful for consumer and prosumer cameras, and are, I believe, warmly welcomed on the market.
Next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas asks, what capture devices would you use to capture video off your living room TV, Elgato HD60 X, Cloner Alliance Box Pro, Hauppauge HD PVR, or something else?
Kai Cochran, help us out.
Depends on what you want to do and how legit you want to be. Some stuff's not going to work unless you go kind of aggressive. I'm just using this Zowie box, and it's tied into my Apple TV, and it will pull 4K straight through. There has been some things where it will not. For that, there's another box called the HD Fury. If you look up those would be what I would get.
Alex Lindsay?
And the way I capture, I don't usually need it to be, 4K. So what I capture is through my ATEM into a HyperDeck. The ATEM will see it and do the handshake. So I'm getting, I get the video there. So that works as well.
Let's go to the next question.
Pedro Gonzalez in Oklahoma is asking, for those of us that don't like the need of incorporating dongles, does this triple monitor DisplayLink dock solve the problem for us? Yes, triple monitors on an M1 Mac, and there's a link there.
Let's start with Jeffrey Powers. Jeffrey.
You mean this one right here? So I, of course, as you can see, I haven't unboxed it yet. It's actually in my in my to-do list. But yeah, that's one of the things that I'm going to be testing out. I love these types of docks, and yeah, you're right, absolutely right. Dongles. The first problem with a dongle is that they're passive. You need to have some extra power to run anything. So a dock would work, and of course, when you're talking 3 monitors, you're definitely going to need some extra power, especially if those monitors are running things like USB-C rather than HDMI into there. And of course, if the monitor's self-powered, then that's not a big deal. But yeah, I'll definitely be checking this out. Check back in about a week, and I'll give you my results.
Jesse Kester.
I'm a little bit conservative, perhaps excessively so, that with the laptop, you're talking about the laptop screen and then 3 more monitors in addition. That's 4 screens that you're running off of one M1 laptop. I'd sooner grab a Mac Mini and have that be responsible for 2 of the monitors and have the laptop be responsible for 2.
Yeah, I have run into too many things hung off of a laptop, and it does not often go well. I remember a circumstance where I had to split one signal with an external device because I just overspec'd what the number of pixels that the card or the device could send out could share to all of those. So, buyer beware. Next question.
This one's from the QR code. This is Yordios P in Nicosia. If you could please share your advice, how to submit permanently 3 music albums from an independent nonprofit choir to music/audio platforms, Apple Music, Spotify, etc., without monthly fees. Be able to add lyrics, image, link to website. Thank you.
Alex Lindsay.
I don't know how to do it without fees. Generally, they want a clearinghouse to manage that for them. They don't want individual people submitting stuff. So typically, companies like CD Baby have been the solutions for those. There is a cost to that. I don't know if it's monthly for CD Baby. I think it's per sale. I think they take a percentage. But there may be other costs. I haven't done it for a long time. But those are the type of thing. You're going to find a service that's going to do it. You're not going to be able to do it yourself. And I think that they all have to make money. so I think that there's going to be some cost to that process. But CD Baby is the one in the past. And again, I haven't done it for a long period of time, but I think that maybe a decade. But that was the one that we used the most in the past.
Next question.
Mark Steele in Orlando, Florida says, thoughts on the new DJI Osmo Action 5 Pro camera?
And there's a link to a Verge article about it. Jesse Kester, start us off.
All right, so this is what we're looking at, the DJI Osmo 5. First thing you can ignore is 4 hours of continuous recording. That was in a very, very, very controlled lab environment, 1080p at 24 frames per second. That's not going to be a real-world application. The challenge that all these action cams have is that how do they compete with the phones we have in our pockets already? This is a 40 megapixel camera. iPhone's 48, even at the wide angle lens. It's such a dense market now that they're up against phones. When the first GoPro came out, it just dominated the market instantly because there was nothing like it at all. And now I see a camera like this, and it's a fantastic bit of tech. But
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, one of the big advantages of them over the phone is that they're somewhat disposable. My phone costs over $1,000. The Action Cam costs $350. If it crunches or whatever, it's probably a little less impactful to my life. Those Action Cams are also a little bit more convenient to attach to things. There's lots of attachment processes. I've got lots of GoPros that I've used in the past. And so GoPros were the real standard for this for a long time, but it has definitely moved out, and DJI has been a big mover in this area. It looks really good. The big thing that they're talking about is 960 frames a second. It's not really 960 frames a second. It's 240 frames a second that is then being they're basically building the rest of the frames, and so so it's not quite the excitement there that we would normally have there to get to the 960. 960, if it was doing a true 960 at 1080p, we haven't seen that at that price point yet, and so that would be truly exciting. But I don't think that you can do what they're doing now with anything that does 240 frames a second. You can take that into Topaz Video AI and turn it into 960, and probably at least as good as what they're doing with DJI. So I think that's I would love to see something that we bought a Sony in probably 2012, the 900, the F9. It wasn't the F. It was something. There was a 700 and 900. The 900 could do 960 frames a second, but it was like this weird little postage stamp. The thing you have to understand when you do really high speed is also that you need a lot of light. Now, you don't need as much with this one because it's really only 240 frames a second, but you do need a lot more light than you would need regularly. So those are things to kind of consider. But I think it's a little bit of smoke and mirrors that they did. When I saw 960, I was like, oh, I got to buy this. And then I read a little bit deeper into it, and I was like, no, I don't have to buy this. So anyway, there you go.
Alexander Knight.
Looks like a really cool product. I mean, obviously DJI makes really good stuff, and they seem to be kind of at the top of their game right now. But Alex, on the note of the capability of doing that kind of frame rate, is that a processor limitation?
It's a whole subsystem limitation. So it's an enormous amount of data that has to move through the camera. So that's the real challenge is that it's, you're taking think about how big your files are when they're 30 frames a second or 60 frames a second, and then you go to 120, and now 120, now multiply that by, whatever, 8, 6, whatever it is to get to 960. Now you're talking about a lot of frames, and that is literally an order and a half magnitude over your 30 frame per second or 60 frame per second video. So at 1080p, it's not just the storage that's a problem. It's a huge transport problem inside the camera. So you have to move all that camera has to be able to move an incredible amount of data around, and that data is being captured so quickly it can't be compressed. And so it has to have a raw buffer. When you look at some of these slow motion cameras, what they have are these huge, essentially RAM, and you're sucking it all into when you're capturing it, you're sucking all of that into, high performance memory. And then it takes sometimes, it used to, I haven't used a Phantom for a couple of years, but it used to be that with the original Phantoms, we would suck all that stuff in, and it would take quite some time to drop it to drive because it was able to pull it in a short period, and then it took a while to get it back onto a drive because it had acquired so much data.
Next. Oh, yeah, Alexander, you were in. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks, how have recent iPhone models like the iPhone 15 or 16 been integrated into professional content creation workflows, and what specific applications or features are being utilized in the industry? Alex?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most notable is obviously Apple is shooting its keynotes with them. So and when you look at it, at first it felt a little soft. I realized I watched the last keynote and wasn't really, until I saw that at the end, I forgot that they had shot it with an iPhone. Like it was kind of it didn't really show up. And what's interesting about it is that Apple using it for their own keynotes, it also allows them to dog food. So they're seeing what the camera can and can't do. And I think that definitely has an effect on things. They're also moving all the support systems forward, the kind of frames that are used, the what's being shot, how it's being shot. So that's probably the most utilized there. The things that are the most important, ACEs, so the color management is built into it. The ability to capture ProRes is really important. And the USB-C is what really changed the game. So USB-C coming out of it and being able to now route power, audio, all kinds of other subsystems in and out of the camera. That's what turned this into a different thing. And so the USB, after all that fighting over USB-C, it was the USB-C that turned the camera into something different, because now I can just plug any old drive into the side of it and start shooting to it, shoot ProRes to the drive. And that's a pretty dramatic change in what we could do in the past.
Yeah, to me, it's like when pianos became common, not everybody became piano players. And it's the same thing. These phones technically are amazing. The question becomes, can you shoot? Can you create? Can you do something with it? It's not the limitation isn't in the device now. There are certain things that phones can do, and there are certain things that cinema cameras can do that phones can't, and vice versa. Alex mentioned something about the fact that your phone is less risky and it's in your pocket than a full-blown cinema camera. But it still comes down to the brain behind it, operating it, and whether or not you know what you're doing there that separates the pros from the amateurs, in my thinking. Next question.
Vic Hernandez in Springfield, Missouri asks, is there a line that differentiates expert systems from AI?
Jesse Kester, what do you think?
I can't express a specific one line that would make the delineation, but what we're talking about is reasoning and decision making, and that decision making can be based on facts and inference in an expert system, and in AI it's a much more limited process of assessing information and aggregating information. Expert systems are more about assessing information and making decisions based on that information. That's done through millions of complicated if-then processes. Like the simplest if-then that I can communicate right now is if green, go, if red, stop. We do that every day. And then being able to make other broad inferences based on millions of bits of data of if-then situations is what we're talking about with expert systems.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, in a nutshell, expert systems tend to be more accurate but more limited, and AI systems tend to be less limited in what they can do, but less accurate. so it just depends on what you need to side with.
Next question.
This one's for me. What is the deal with the severe monitor limitation on various M-series Apple chips? Their GPUs have so many cores, yet the vanilla M2 Mac Mini can only do 2 monitors. Every computer should be able to run 4 monitors. That is the minimum for me.
Alex, what do you think?
It's $599.
I'm so frustrated.
So once you pay $1,300 for it, you can run 4 monitors. I think the Mac Mini Pro will do 4 monitors. It has to do with the buses as well. So it's not just the process, the GPUs that have to deliver it. It's the buses that have to deliver that out. Now, some people have hacked that, and of course, you have the pluggables and you have the stuff that's there that you can get more monitors out of there. It is what is Apple willing to reliably promise. And Apple tends to be very conservative about what they want to reliably promise. So what they know is that with the buses at the highest rate of usage, with the most graphics and the most that they could put out, they know that they can reliably probably support 3 or 4, which is why they say 2. And so is they want headroom. They want to make sure that you're never going to have a problem with that piece of hardware, that it's never going to be glitchy. They're fine with people like Pluggable and others putting something else on the outside, because when it goes wrong, you'll blame them. You won't blame Apple. And so Apple Apple is holding their elbows in for that, but that's why it's probably only 2.
I think Alex is spot on with this. There's some marketing here. There's also the fact, I'll never forget the first time, probably 15 years ago, that I got a hold of Activity Monitor on my desktop computer, and I launched it, and I went, holy jamokes, look at all the stuff that's running that I don't pay any attention to. I mean, it's looking at the bus for is the mouse down or up, or it's doing these things hundreds and hundreds of thousands of times a second. And back then, all those years ago, I couldn't even fathom then the scale at which the machine's central processing unit is trying to figure out what you're asking it to do all the time. You fast forward the 15 years and we've got so much more capability, but we've also got so much more stuff coming in and out of these machines every nanosecond practically. So it's just a big chase. I find it fascinating. Next question.
This one's from Peter Moore in Auckland, New Zealand. Video day question for Alex. Are you allowed to disclose which Spiritbox music video, if any, you worked on?
Oh, Alex, can you?
I am totally allowed to disclose this. I didn't even know who Spiritbox was until you asked this question. So the answer is
You're
no.
disclosing the fact that you don't know.
I guess I'm showing my age. It looks like a great video. I opened it up and I didn't turn the audio on yet, but I'll give it a shot. My daughter has me always listening to. My daughter and my son are always exposing me to new bands, but this isn't one of them yet so far. So we'll take a look at it and see what there is to see.
In the interim, next question.
Another one from me. You would think particle effects would consistently look convincing in movies in 2024, but I still see reasonably large budget action movies with unrealistic gunfire and bad smoke and fire effects. Why does this happen? Jesse Kester, start us off.
The visual effects pipeline is the most abused pipeline in the Hollywood workflow, and all pipelines are pretty badly abused. But visual effects gets it the worst, where it's just 24-hour turnarounds on jobs that should take 4 weeks, and horrible budgets, just ever scraping down budgets, forces to bid before they know what the exact work order is, and they're competitive bids, so everybody's trying to undercut each other just to get the contract. And for, not for nothing, that's Kevin Feige's house. Anyway.
Enough said. Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, money and time. Everything's all about time, money. And so when you see things, when people say we didn't use any visual effects, it means that we used the proper amount of budget and the proper amount of time to actually do the visual effects on the computer. But there's a lot of visual effects in a lot of those things. But what we do is we spend the right amount of money and we spend the right amount of time, and you end up with something that looks very realistic. And you can say that it was not, that we did it all physically or all that. But most of the time, people are not giving it can be one or the other, not giving them enough time or not giving them enough money to actually do it well.
Jason?
Yeah, another aspect of this that I find fascinating is what appears to be blockbuster caliber movies with big name stars that are running directly to streaming services. This is kind of a side issue, but you're like, I can't believe that so-and-so actor or so-and-so actress is appearing on this, direct to digital movie. And then when you watch it, you realize where the money savings is happening. It's in the visual effects. It's in the, cinematography. It's probably a lesser known director. And at the end of the day, you see that those actors are listed in the executive producer roles. So they've got a back end on that experience, on what's happening with regard to that movie. And it's still pretty good for something that you don't have to pay any additional money to watch. But I find a big disparity in things like visual effects in that kind of context as well.
Alexander Knight.
Yeah, one of the more recent movies that I watched, and I really enjoyed the movie, and I'll watch anything with Jason Statham just because I love action movies and I love all the stuff that he does. But I watched The Beekeeper. I don't know if anyone has seen this, but I just looked up the budget. It has it has a much smaller budget than I expected. It has about $40 million is apparently what they spent. But all the effects, all the smoke, all the fire, all the gun stuff, is just, it really takes you out of it. That's the thing, right? And it really... I'm just surprised, even like in a $40 million. I mean, what do I know? I don't do visual effects, but
well, it took you out of it. I wonder if it takes the majority of the audience out of it. I mean, I've been looking at what I would consider unrealistic practical effects like that. Things that you should know better. The flame coming out of that pistol shouldn't be a foot long, but because they wanted you to see how many people are shooting on screen, they really took it over the top for storytelling, as opposed to let's make it look real. It's just an interesting thing. I think we're going to see more and more of that as we go along. Next question.
From the QR code, Chester Sweeney in Las Vegas, Nevada. For $60, are the Audio-Technica ATH S220 BTBK wireless headphones worth the price or a good deal?
Jeffrey Powers, do you have experience with these?
Well, the Audio-Technica headphones are a pretty good deal in a lot of different things. They're well quality. You'll see them in different types of productions. I like these. The only downside on this one is it has a 40 millimeter driver instead of a 50 millimeter driver. It does have a frequency response of 5 hertz to 32 kilohertz, and so it will hear what you're trying to pump in there. And $60, yeah, that's a pretty good price for that.
Next question.
Next one's from Gordon Lake, Los Angeles, California. For production, do you pick a technology and stick with it, or do you put competing technologies in your toolkit and use the one that's the best fit for the moment?
Alex, start us off.
It depends. So it depends
Our
on
favorite
what we're
answer.
doing. There's definitely some things that you especially as part of a whole subsystem and you start to build something out, you go, okay, well, you look at a bunch of things and you say, okay, now I'm going to commit to this and kind of move down that path. And so, and then there's other places where we have, it's, different cameras for different needs. We have different pieces of software for different things that we want to do. So it just really depends on how core it is to what you're doing there, and how complicated it is to get up to speed.
And Jesse Kester.
In general, we use the tested fixed technologies for client work, and we run our experiments on internally generated projects.
There you go. Tomorrow on the show, we're talking NAS solutions. If you are looking at storage right now, if your workflow is based on network attached storage and the additional server functionality that NAS approaches enable. Tomorrow is your day. We'll be talking about that, handling your questions and stuff like that. Don't forget Extra Hours every Monday now, and starting at 6 p.m. Pacific time. We are doing kind of a version of the show, same kind of thing. It's a Q&A show, but it's really nice to be able to have your questions answered. And then for people on the other side of the world who don't have the morning schedule that we do here in California and in the Pacific time zone, this allows you not to have to get up in the middle of the night and still get the office hours experience. So look for that. Check out Extra Hours. It happens every single week, Monday, and again at 6 p.m. Also wanted to make a little pitch here at the end. As you know, the Office Hours is a not-for-profit, and we are always looking to give you as much information to go as many places and look through things. We love doing our shows when we get to travel to some place like NAB or CES or one of these shows. It does require a lot of people put in a lot of time and effort as a volunteer, and it does have some hard costs involved. So if you like the kind of content you get here on Office Hours and you'd like to help us out by pitching in to support more go see and bring you the information from the field, you can donate to us. We are a 501c3 official not-for-profit. And so if you or the company that employs you finds value in the content that we create here and you want to support us a little more, we make that possible. Just go to officehours.global/donate. We'll be right back. One of our favorite people is